Yeah, I muted though.
All right, welcome everyone. Please stand and join us with a moment of silence followed by the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Everybody, my name is Peter, and I'm an alcoholic. By the grace of God, good sponsorship, and a program of action outlined in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, I haven't found it necessary to take a drink since March 17th, 2012, and for that I'm grateful. Welcome to the 7 p.m. Thursday night meeting, the Treasure Map group of Alcoholics Anonymous. This is an open meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. Before we start our evening, please remember to shut off or silence your cell phones during the meeting. Thank you very much. All right, and we send a special welcome out to any visitors from out of town. So if you please stand and introduce yourself. Okay, and also to anyone who may be visiting the Treasure Map meeting for the first time, please stand and be recognized. Catherine and Dan. All right, welcome. All right, and then finally, is there anyone here who was at their first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous? Please stand and be recognized. Okay. Now, if you're new here, we're very happy you are here. If you would like, you can stop by the welcome table. We have a gift for you. Again, welcome. The Treasure Map group of Alcoholics Anonymous believes in working the 12 steps as outlined in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous with a sponsor. There are many home group members here tonight that are willing to be sponsors. If you are new or you don't have a sponsor, you can stop at the back table during the break, and you can see Randy there, all right, and he'll be able to help you out with names and numbers of home group members willing to be sponsors. All right, the Treasure Map group of Alcoholics Anonymous celebrates our sobriety birthdays on the last Thursday of each month. That is next week, so it's a birthday night if you're a home group member. Treasure Map home group members celebrate each month of sobriety with the first 12 months, or for the first 12 months, then each consecutive year thereafter. If you'd like to make the Treasure Map group your home group, please see Randy again at the back table for details. See here, the Treasure Map group, Alcoholics Anonymous, is committed to bringing a message of hope to those who suffer from alcoholism. We believe this message is contained within the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous and our personal experiences. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for a membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. All right, in our meeting tonight, we'll focus on step 4. Our Big Book study will begin shortly. If you need a big book, then we can get one for you during the break. We do have plenty to go around. It is a big book study, so don't be shy about borrowing a big book. Or if you need one for yourself permanently, talk to Randy. All right. Okay, we have several announcements tonight. All right, online financial support for the Treasure Map meeting group Treasure Map meeting is now available. Recurring monthly support is deeply appreciated and helps fund our meeting events, speaker costs, coffee, and birthday celebrations. For more details, see Randy in the back or go to treasuremapmeeting.com. Also, if you give online, please grab a tag and place it in the basket as it's passed. We have these on the tables here. Go ahead and do that. Please feel free to take our Treasure Map 12-step cards. It's right here. It's a great way for you to pass on your information about the treasure map meeting. Plus, you can place your name and phone number on the back to assist others in the program. So a great way to pass that on. The study questions for Chapter 5, How It Works, pages 64 through 71, the fourth step, will be up on treasuremapmeeting.com starting tomorrow. Oh, they are up now. All right, perfect. And we will be covering this section of the Big Book in 2 weeks. We will take 2 weeks to cover the fourth step on our Big Book study nights, and our speakers will share their experience, strength, and hope concerning all 3 areas of the fourth step. All right, special events. So on Thursday, October 25th, we'll be celebrating birthdays for our home group members. Everyone is welcome, and please join us for birthday cake at the break. On Saturday, November 10th, the 7th annual Sioux Falls Elkathon, hosted by District 5, will be held at the Calvary Cathedral in Sioux Falls from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. In support of this event, the Treasure Map Group will be sponsoring the 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. portion of the day. Our topic will be Step 4, Sex Inventory and Ideals, focusing on page 68 through 70 out of the Big Book. Come out and support our local intergroup activities. Check out SiouxFallsAA.org for details. On October 12th through 14th, the Area 63 Fall Conference will be held at the Ramkota Hotel in Rapid City, South Dakota. Check out SiouxFallsAA.org for details. Our GSR is Amy H., and she'll be representing us at this service conference. Thanks, Amy. On Thursday, November 1st, we will be having a special guest speaker at the Treasure Map Group. Don M. from Louisville, Kentucky will be our speaker. Don M. has traveled the world in Alcoholics Anonymous, sharing his experience, strength, and hope. Please pass the word and invite your friends to a night that will be wonderful. So it's exciting. Coming a long ways. On Thursday, November 15th, we had our second Welcome Newcomers meeting. At our first Welcome Newcomers meeting, we had 25 people with 1 year or less of sobriety. Our goal is 57. So please pass the word to all who have 1 year or less, although everyone is welcome, obviously. So also, we will celebrate with free snacks. And so your District 5. Okay, so Corrections and Treatment Committee. So they are looking for folks to run meetings at the Minnehaha County Jail, Work Release Center, in the South Dakota State Penitentiary. So if you're going to volunteer at the state pen, it does require a background check, and also a minimum of 3 months of continuous sobriety. You can contact Matt M. You can email him at matt@mcexpert.com. All right, so that's all our announcements. Okay, and then we can, if we can please welcome Lynn to read How It Works from our textbook, Alcoholics Anonymous.
My name is Lynn, and I'm an alcoholic. How it works. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program. Usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. There are such unfortunates. They are not at fault. They seem to have been born that way. They are naturally incapable of grasping and developing a manner of living which demands rigorous honesty. Their chances are less than average. There are those, too, who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders, but many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest. Our stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like, what happened, and what we are like now. If you have decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you're ready to take certain steps. At some of these we balked. We thought we can find an easier, softer way, but we could not. With all the earnestness at our command, we beg of you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. Some of us have tried to hold on to our old ideas, and the result was nil until we let go absolutely. Remember that we deal with alcohol, cunning, baffling, powerful. Without help, it is too much for us, but there is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find him now. Have measures availed us nothing. We stood as a turning point. We ask his protection and care with complete abandon. Here are the steps we took, which are suggested as a program of recovery. When we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought for prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for the knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we try to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all of our affairs. Many of us exclaimed, "What an order! I can't go through with it." Do not be discouraged. No one among us has been able to maintain anything like perfect adherence to these principles. We are not saints. The point is that we are willing to grow along spiritual lines. The principles we have set down are guides to progress. We claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. Our description of the alcoholic, the chapter to the agnostic, and the personal adventures before and after make clear 3 pertinent ideas. A, that we were alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. B, that probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism. And C, that God could and would if he were sought.
All right. And now please welcome Catherine to read our 12 traditions as we pass the baskets. Thank you in advance for your generous support and your generosity. Tradition 7 states that every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions.
Yeah.
I have marked the book right here.
Yeah, I don't have it memorized. Sorry.
Who does? All right.
Sounds good. Thank you. Do I read the short form or the long form? Here we go. All right. My name is Catherine, and I'm an alcoholic. All right. 1, our common welfare should come first. Personal recovery depends upon AA unity. 2, for our group purpose, there is but one ultimate authority, a loving God as he may express himself in our group conscience. Our leaders are but trusted servants. They do not govern. 3, the only requirement for AA membership is a desire to stop drinking. 4, each group should be autonomous except in matters affecting other groups or AA as a whole. 5, each group has but one primary purpose, to carry its message to the alcoholic who still suffers. 6, an AA group ought never endorse, finance, or lend the AA name to any related facility or outside enterprise, lest problems of money, property, and prestige divert us from our primary purpose. 7, every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. 8, Alcoholics Anonymous should remain forever non-professional, but our service centers may employ special workers. 9, AA as such ought never be organized, but we may create service boards or committees directly responsible to those they serve. 10, Alcoholics Anonymous has no opinion on outside issues, hence the AA name ought never be drawn into public controversy. 11, our public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, and films. 12, anonymity is the spiritual foundation of all our traditions, ever reminding us to place principles before personalities.
All All right, we talk a lot about home group membership at the Treasure Map Group because we believe it is vital to our recovery. What does it mean to be a home group member? Here's a brief excerpt from the AA General Service Conference approved pamphlet on the AA group. The AA group, traditionally, most AA members through the years have found it important to belong to one group that they call their home group. This is a group where they accept service responsibilities and try to sustain friendships. And although all AA members are usually welcome at all groups and feel at home at any of these meetings, the concept of the home group has still remained the strongest bond between the AA member and the fellowship. With membership comes the right to vote on issues that might affect the group and might also affect AA as a whole, the process that forms the very cornerstone of AA service structure. As with all group conscience matters, each AA member has one vote, and this ideally is voiced through the home group. Over the years, the very essence of AA strength has remained with our home group, which for many members becomes our extended family. Once isolated by our drinking, we find it in the home group, a solid continuing support system, friends, and very often a sponsor. We also learn firsthand through the group's workings how to place principles before personalities in the interest of carrying the AA message. Talking about her own group, a member says, part of my commitment is to show up at my home group meetings, greet newcomers at the door, and be available to them. Not only for them, but for me. My fellow group members are the people who know me, listen to me, and steer me straight when I'm off in left field. They give me their experience, strength, and AA love, enabling me to pass it on to the alcoholic who still suffers. If you are interested in making the Treasure Map meeting your home group, please see Randy at the back table on the break, during the break, or after the meeting. Okay, wonderful. All right, and now it is my pleasure to introduce our 15-minute speaker, Richie from Sioux Falls. So please join me in welcoming Richie.
I'm Richie, I'm an alcoholic. So my sobriety date is October 19th, 2010. So if I don't drink tonight, I'll have 8 years tomorrow. And that's all God's grace and you people. So my experience on the 4-step, first I'll qualify myself here. I guess I started drinking young, like a lot of us, and I had a lot of fun. Okay, it really worked. I mean, I figured in high school if I wasn't working, I was going to be drinking, and that's what I did till about 28. And I had a lot of fun till I was about 28. I mean, it worked. And then somewhere in there, I started to try to control it. I remember talking to some people about that seemed fairly normal, that I'm going to take a sabbatical from this. I remember telling this girl, Annie, that. I didn't even really know what sabbatical meant, except for and I never was able to control it, and I didn't even know what was happening, okay? And by 30, I was drinking on the job. I was running a company, and I was drinking on the job, and not because of the stress of the job, not because I had to or I would be sick. I still didn't really even know what was happening to me. I thought I had to be the only one in the world doing this. And then I found Detox Center. I'm from Minneapolis, and I used to go to my parents' house to sit for the weekend and shake and puke and then rub my back and feed me and think I'm going to take a break from this. And I really didn't even know what was happening, and it was the withdrawals. But the plan was to take that break, and I'd go home Sunday and I'd start drinking again, and then I started the detox place because they would medicate me, and the plan was every time I went into their Mission Detox, they know me by name back there, to leave and not drink. And then I went in and I told them, you can't let me out. This was 30, so 30 years old, I wanted to stop for good. I didn't want to drink anymore in my heart, and so that was almost 16 years ago, and I'm 8 years sober. So when I'm going to tell you my experience, I missed the boat on what Alcoholics Anonymous is for 8 years. For a lot of reasons, because I wasn't a good listener, because I didn't believe people, I didn't want to do the work. But I was at a lot of meetings in them 8 years, okay? And I went to a bunch of treatment centers that I think screwed stuff. Not knocking treatment centers, but some of these places made it difficult to work Alcoholics Anonymous program. They gave me an easier, softer way that didn't work for me. Some of them were, they put me on pills. I really hoped I had depression, not alcoholism. I really hoped that a lot of things in cognitive skills therapy and anger management and all kinds of stuff in 8 years and 9 treatment centers and hanging out in AA. And I had really good men around me for that 8 year, good sponsors, my sponsor had good sponsors. I was in some really good meetings, had really good men around me all this time too. And that didn't keep me sober. In 8 years, real quick, 3 to 9 months, I was where I would drink, almost 2 years one time. And so my experience with a 4-step is I've done a lot, okay? The first couple were in treatment centers, and I remember them, trying to tell me, put down who you resent. And then the only person in there I could come up with, the first one was me. That was my 4-step. I resent me. I don't even remember what else was involved with this paperwork, and they put me in front of a clergy guy, and I read that to him, and he goes, okay, on your way. And got nothing out of it. And the next one, I could only come up with me and my parents, because they taught me how to drink. They drove with me drinking and drive, and they taught me to drink and drive. All this stuff, and I didn't get what they were coming. And then I got a sponsor. His name was Ben. He got me in a meeting. I had 30 days sober, and he's the one who started me doing them out of the big book. And again, I'm not a very good listener, and Ben would sit across from me. And I remember the first time we met, he goes, well, we're going to read this book, and if you have any questions, stop me, and I'll answer them. If something doesn't make sense, we're going to figure this out. And he starts reading, and meanwhile, I'm living in a halfway house, and he's reading this book to you, and I go, in my mind, I'm going, I do have questions. What the hell is this about? You're reading a book to me. This makes no sense. I thought you were going to introduce me to the cool people and maybe find me a girlfriend and take me golfing. What is this? And so he's reading, and I'm in my head going, I'm going to go home and take a nap. Screw this. And and he was a patient guy, and he was talking to me about prayer and asked me if I'd pray, and I go, yeah. And I maybe would one night, and then he asked me how my prayer is. I'd say good, because I want him to like me. I'm not praying, but so I missed the boat on a lot of stuff here. Step one is that how deep this is that I'm not just Richie, I'm an alcoholic. I am powerless over alcohol. I will drink again. And Ben used to tell me that, and I'd start crying. And I go, no, I'm not. I'm not going to drink this time. And I would. And then step 2, I just really wanted nothing to do with any kind of God. I was the guy who talks about in the big book who bristles. And I was also the guy who neatly avoided it. I went to confirmation. I got confirmed. I don't even remember being in the thing. There's a picture of me. I got confirmed. But I don't remember. I went for the party afterwards because you got money. And that's what everybody in my class did. Go get confirmed, and you have a party after. 2 years it takes you to get a party. And then step 3, so it's hard to do those when I'm telling my sponsor that I believe, but I really didn't. And we'd go through the motions, and then we get to a 4-step, which I don't like, because I'm honestly, the first time we did it out of the book, he helped me. He walked me through this, but I was adding no God, okay, this whole time for years, telling him I was and I wasn't. So I'm good at mechanical 4-steps. With help from them and some guys back home. They hold workshops. I'd go help in them. And they take people through this. So when I finally got into the big book and did one with Ben, one, I had to figure out what resentment was. And this is just how he helped me. This don't mean nothing. Like, I thought I had to want to kill somebody to put them on my list, or hate them. And he helped me kind of say, no, in the story where I think it's Jim or whoever feels irritated, he goes, well, that's a resentment. That's what, and I go, oh, so if I put everybody who irritates me on this list, I'm like, oh shit. Now this is what got me started. Instead of just me and my parents, I went back through my life like the book says, and he helped me. I've had a lot of guys help me. I've done quite a few of these to look back through my life, whether it start today. And how I do them is work my way back through jobs or 5 years periods of my life, looking back, taking time, and I just write down these names of the people and institutions and principles. It was a tough one, but I had to have help with that too. So I get it down, and then I write. Oh geez. The cause. Well, that's the easy part too. My dad, he called me stupid. He taught me this is some of the old ones. He taught me to drink and drive. He didn't love me. He pushed me away when I had problems, blah, blah, blah. All this. I could find a lot of stuff with my dad when I had a long list of people who irritated me or I felt had done something to me. So that was the easy part, to figure out what they did to cause me to be irritated or have a resentment against them. And then the effects, my part, I feel like I should have a chart up here doing this, but I only got 15 minutes. So, and then the effects, they walked me through this, and, we're just going to write the ones down in the book. Don't have to do, my dad calling me stupid affects my self-esteem, etc. If you don't have a sponsor, get one to help you do this. And then he would say, and now I want you to, here's the thing I skipped a lot, okay? This is a lot of 4 steps in 8 years, and he would tell me there's some prayers in there. And these are, when you're not willing to pray, it's hard to do the prayers. So I had about my 5th or 6th 4-step, I went in and this was, I don't know, treatment number 6. And I had, real quick, I was in this treatment center, and I had to get the God thing down, okay? And in that place, I heard, my sponsor came in, Rich, he said, do you think there's a chance in hell that there's something out there that can restore you to sanity? For 2, quit overcomplicating it, because I was online researching, asking people, finding fault and everything, thought I needed to pick this perfect thing, but he said, do you think there's a chance in hell? And I went, okay. And I heard a man in there say, you don't even need to believe in God to pray. And I went, whoa. And there was a lot of other stuff in this area of me trying to do this. So then I got out, and I'm doing the 4-step with a sponsor, and he said this time, and he was telling me to do this previous 4 steps, but between the 3rd and the 4th column, there's some prayers in the big book. It says, he said, but before you go to the 4th column, he goes, I want you to say these prayers and picture them in your head while you're doing it, okay? And the prayers are right in the book. God, help me show my dad the same tolerance, pity, and patience I would cheerfully grant a sick friend. He's a sick person too. How can I be helpful to him? And then I want you to write down the 4th column, where it asks me to write out my mistakes that I've made in my life, not because of the stuff he did to me, but how did I show up in my dad's life? Where was I selfish, dishonest, and self-centered? And then I want you to say those prayers and then write that 4th column. And I want you to go to a church, not because it's a religious place, but because if you cry there, no one will judge you. I don't want you to go to the library. So this is some weird, this is pretty cool. So I just got married in this same church. It's the church I got confirmed in. A lot of my dad got buried there. My uncle got buried there. So I go to this church, and I walk in there, and I don't really attend church, but I've been there, and I go in there, and I'm a big place, and I'm going to do these prayers, and it starts to get some commotion in there. So I go off to the side, and this guy's doing a mic check up there. He's like, he said something like, Tom Streggy, good to see you in the church again. My name ain't Tom, but I don't even know any other Streggies, and I hear my last name in this church, and I'm already feeling goofy. Okay, like, whoa. And then I go off to the side, and I do my prayers, and this is what happened to me. I started picturing, I don't remember where it started, so I'm going to use this example. God help me show my mom the same tolerance, pity, and patience I would cheerfully grant a sick friend, picturing her in my head. And somewhere along those lines, I had a lot of people to pray for. This was a couple of hours worth of prayer and writing or more in there. And somewhere along the line, I pictured, instead of my mom, as I see her today, there's a picture of her in her house of her like 3 and my aunt at 4. You know, and this is how I pictured, that came into my head. I lost it. I started bawling. I mean, I couldn't, and I started picturing all these other people. There's a guy that I used to really want to hurt because he used to hurt the next girlfriend of mine. It doesn't matter, but really wanted to hurt this guy. And through these prayers, during that period, I really lost the ability to hate like I used to. I thought I had this spiritual awakening. I thought this was it. The sermon went on. It was on, I still got the piece of paper from the pastor in here. It's on, reconciliation. He starts a sermon on reconciliation, which somebody can explain this to me better, or explain it to you better. Like I'm making things right or something. I don't even know, but it's been a while. So, and he's talking about where do you find friends, at Bunny's, the bar, or at church. And this is big. This is a few hours I'm sitting there. And I really thought this was it. I'd done drinking. This is what I'd been looking for. And I went and talked to that guy off to the side. And I mean, this was the spiritual experience. And I left there, and I don't know, I stayed sober a little while longer, but I got drunk again. So, but I still have that experience. The problem was I didn't go past the 5th step. I've always done a 4th and a 5th step. So my thing was skipping the prayer. So it's changed my life that one day. And now since then, I've done another handful of quite a few 4th and 5th steps. I'm 8 years sober. I think I've done 5. Okay, because I don't do a 10th step perfectly. And thanks, Peter, for asking me to speak, because I probably should do another one, because thinking about it after you talk to me, I go, oh, geez, got some work to do. So they're pretty easy for me, because except for the fact that I don't like to take the time, okay? I've never had a problem with looking at my stuff. Prayer helped me get through that, but I missed the boat on that. I wouldn't do the prayers. Had I not done the prayers, I would never have had that experience. And then I get to also see how I showed up in these people's life that I had a resentment with. It's not what I came here for. And then the fear part, the fear part took me a little bit to understand. It actually took me a little bit of sobriety time, okay, to understand, because I could write this stuff out, and it says in there to list my fears. And, not spiders and snakes and falling off of buildings, but fear of being alone for the rest of my life. Never having a girlfriend. Or if I had a girlfriend while doing a 4th step, what if she leaves me? She's probably going to leave me. So this is what I'm writing. That's the fear. And then Ben used to help me, because it says, why do we have this fear? This is just how he helped me. He would say, what will happen if the fear comes true? Why do we have that fear? If I didn't have a woman in my life, God, I'm never going to meet a woman. Never. He goes, well, what will happen? And in my mind, this is what I'd picture. Me down at the river by a bridge with a burning barrel and a beard. I didn't have a beard then. Fishing, alone, forever. If I don't meet I'm going to be down there. Home, there's a lot of other. What if my mom dies? Well, she's gonna. Who's gonna borrow me money? Who's gonna get me out of jail? Who's gonna take care of me? How can I throw a funeral? Geez, what will happen when that happens? And later, and it says, well, we gotta. Not gonna read out of here because I can't see very good. So it says, well, now we're on a different basis. This is the part that took me some actual experience to believe in. Now we're on a different basis, the basis of trusting and relying upon God. So when these fears come in, gives me a prayer. God, remove these fears and direct me to what you'd have me be. And actually do those in the 4th step too. And the whole gist of it, which didn't make sense at the beginning because it doesn't, is that when I'm fearful of never meeting a woman, I got to rely on God's going to have my back, and that not to do something stupid like I used to, like meet one girl. This is my history of, we'll get into sex in a second here, but you meet a girl, get along for 24 hours, move in with each other in 48, and hate each other in a week, but stay together for a year and a half. That's what fear causes me to do, or fear causes me to look for another girlfriend while I have a girlfriend, in case she leaves me. Fear of not having enough money used to cause me to do illegal things to make money on the side. And actually, with my last relapse, fear caused me to work a full-time job. In 6 months from layoff, start working an extra job because I'm going to get laid off in 6 months, and so I'm going to push meetings out. That was fear. Oh, makes me chase money. The fact of the matter is now, okay, this is how it works for me, is I had to have some experience since this period that if I don't have enough money, my head goes, just keep doing AA and helping other men and keep doing what you've been doing, and God will take care of you. That's really hard at the beginning to believe because that didn't make sense to me. But I've experienced through this 8 years of actually not stopping this stuff and not panicking, and good men around me and a good sponsor and going to meetings and not stopping, that sometimes that fear lasts 12 hours and then I go, geez, look, it happened. You know, but I got it. I know that now. So I just try to keep doing it. That's what the whole fear thing is for me, is not to believe the BS. The story I tell myself, what's going to happen if the fear comes true, is not true. In fact, it's probably total BS. Like, my mom is going to die. Okay. Why worry about? I know that if I keep doing this, it'll all work out. I mean, I got you guys, I got family, and I've got God who's going to guide me through it. Because it's going to happen. I hope it's not for a long time. But stuff like that could cause me to do a lot of things. That story I tell myself. So I just need to keep doing this. And the sex inventory, I don't know how much time, but I messed that one up a lot, right? I write down, sponsor had me write down all the old relationships, you know, from today to back in the day, the stuff when I was a little kid with the neighbors, the whole deal. Let's write it down, just look at it. And then it says, that's the easy part. But then through there, it says a lot about, let's pray for the right ideal. Like 5 times it says that in there. Pray and write out the ideal. That's the part I would skip all. In fact, the first time he had me do it, I wouldn't do it. And then when I finally brought it to him, I said, well, she's going to, look like this, and she's going to be like, he's like, no, not that. I want you to write out how you should want to show up in a relationship, which I had no clue. So this is the other part, that finally putting some time together, meeting some people who I look up to in relationships, because 8 years ago, what I thought what a man did in a relationship, what I wrote down, is not what I write down today. It's not even close. I mean, I got it's through working the deal and learning from other men. But I got to write it down so that I can pray about it. This is the coolest thing in this, that helped change me to where I got married a year ago. And I'm married to a good woman who I would have had no business even talking to a while ago, okay? But I'm not asking for a pat on. I'm giving this all credit to this program, God, and you guys, that I show up and I haven't made her cry since I met her. And I used to do that to girls in sobriety. I mean, this is because I didn't even know what I was doing. Shouldn't have been in a relationship. I did a lot of dating and made mistakes, but I got to be honest in that stuff, and had to. So it's just a fact-finding inventory. Let's write it down, look at the truth, and ask for some help to straighten it out. Not a sin list. This is not even, some of it is just the facts. How did I show up in these areas? Ask God for some direction. And I got good men around me. Some of them I don't hang out with a lot, but I get to talk to and watch. And I go, geez, look, And when I first got, the things that have changed in my head since I first got here that I didn't think would change. I just, envious of guys, and I'm not trying to rip on it, envious of guys that are getting hit on by the Glory House girls, or, and envious of guys who have 3 girlfriends, and like, that's not even attractive to me anymore. Like, I didn't think this is just one of the things that changed through, not me, through doing the inventory, and most of all going past it and doing the rest of the work. And real quick, I just need to read, I didn't understand this too, but why am I even doing this? It's not any, because I did a lot of therapy stuff, and this is not there may be some therapeutic stuff in there, but the real reason, and I don't know if you guys read this when you did the 3rd step or if you're doing it now, but it's, though I love this. Right after the 3rd step, it says, though our decision was a vital and crucial step, I love that. If I want to live, I got to do this. It could have little permanent effect. And I love the word permanent in here because I was a relapser. I have friends that said, if I was you, I'd have given up. Like AA people told me that. Little permanent effect at once followed by a strenuous effort to face and be rid of the things which have been blocking us. What's been blocking me from God was all this stuff I've been relying upon, and I got to look at it. And and that's 4 through 9 or 4 through 12, whatever your sponsor tells you it is. But it's not just the 4th and the 5th step. I did a lot of, but I'm just, something happened 8 years ago. One, it was a prayer to help me be willing. And a lot of people were saying the same things that they were saying to me for 8 years, but it made sense. And then I had to do the work. So I'm grateful to be here, and thanks for having me speak.
Great, and thank you, Richie, for speaking. All right, and we'll be taking a short break. If you are a smoker, please smoke out of the southwest door and probably dispose of your cigarette butts in the can. So, all right, let's meet back in 10 minutes. So 53 after.
Is there more than
Let's get grab a cup of Joe now. I'm ready to rock and roll, man.
Cool. Yes, sir. All right, if everybody could start getting ready to take their seats. If you don't have a big book already, you can grab one really quick before we get started in the back table, so we can get started on the study. I will find out.
What page? What page?
We're going to start roughly about page 64
Yep.
For anybody who's asking. Okay, all right. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our facilitator, Mike from Sioux Falls. So please join me in welcoming Mike.
Hey, good evening, everyone. My name is Michael Donnelly. I'm an alcoholic. Great to be here tonight. And I'm going to get us through the fourth step here. And then other folks are going to take us through the other steps. So looking forward to hearing their experience, strength, and hope with those other steps too. So that's great. How this process will work, just because of the way we have the scheduling done, is that tonight we'll talk only about resentments and the process of writing down a four-step. And then next week, we will have a birthday night at the beginning of the meeting. We'll have a speaker talk about their personal experience with the four-step. The following week after that, we have a special meeting here at the Treasure Map Group, as most of you know. A gentleman named Don M. from Louisville, Kentucky will be joining us. So we'll take a little pause on the four-step, right? The week after that, we'll come back to the book and we'll do fear and sex, right? And then the next week we'll have another person discuss it, and then we'll have another group of people another person go through the big book on step 5. That'll be Mark J. Mark's a home group member here. After that, we'll have a young lady speaking on her experience, strength, and hope the following week on step 5, and we'll continue that and work our way through the rest of the steps. Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit. There's some handouts that that I had just to keep our flow of conversation going. Does anybody not have the handouts? Anybody not have the handouts? Can you make sure those get passed down to the rest of the group, or are there no more copies? There should be 2. The first one says step 3 in context, right, of the big book. Everybody have that? Should be ample. Everybody have that one? They not have that one? And then the second one is a 4-step worksheet that just says resentments, review of resentments. Everybody got that one? All right. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take this sheet here, 3rd step, in context to the big book. And before we jump into that particular handout, we're going to just review a little bit, because it's always important when we're talking about any of the steps to understand the context of which the step is hitting us, right? And so I remember when I first came into Alcoholics Anonymous, my first thing is, why do I have to do this, right? So I came to some meetings, I kind of was sober, I was not drinking, I was kind of hanging out with people. We would go to coffee shops, chain smoke and chug coffee, right? And talk about each other and talk about the girls at the meeting. We would laugh and have fun. And then all of a sudden somebody's like, your life's a mess, you need to do a 4-step. And I was like, I'm sober. I even have like the 3-month chip to prove it, right? So why would we do this? And why would we do this? The reason we would do this is because the nature of alcoholism is not about drunkenness. And this is a reoccurring theme that we state constantly at the Treasure Map Group, right? Alcoholism and drunkenness are not the same things. Just because a person regularly gets drunk that is no indication that they have alcoholism. And that's weird. Because when I came in, that's how I defined it. All I wanted to do was not be drunk. Right? I wanted to stay sober. Those are how I wanted to those are the words I used to express what was going on. But according to our big book, alcoholism is a 3-fold disease. The first part of that is what the doctor's opinion calls an allergy to alcohol. Silkworth goes into great detail on that. We've covered it in prior weeks. You can go to our website, listen to those talks if you want. We're certainly plenty of us sitting around here. If you have questions about that, we'll gladly spend as much time with you going through that as you need. But how that deal works is this. When this body has a drink of alcohol, something happens to it on the inside that doesn't happen to somewhere between 95 and 98% of the rest of the human race. I have no idea why it happens to me. Just trust me, it does. Right? I could prove it to you, but it would be a disastrous day in my life. Right? I don't want to do that anymore. But this body, for some reason, demands more alcohol when alcohol is digested. And I don't know why that is. Not the truth for my sister. But in my life, my account goes like this. 1 always means 2, 2 always means 3, 3 almost always means 4, 5. I mean, that's what happens. I didn't know that my body was sick. I had no idea. The Big Book calls it an allergy. And once alcohol is consumed, the Big Book then references the manifestation of that allergy as something we call the phenomenon of craving. So craving occurs after I drink alcohol. Right? So as long as I don't drink alcohol, the craving can't kick off and I don't have to get drunk. That makes sense. And that would be great if all I had was that, but I don't just have that, I have the second part too. And that's what Silkworth and the chapter more about alcoholism describes as a mental obsession, or an inability to differentiate the true from the false, as Dr. Silkworth would say. And Richie talked about that. Richie talked about how he would tell himself stories about his fear, and he would believe those stories about his fear, and that would lead him to behaviors, right? He was afraid he wouldn't have enough money, so he talked about doing illegal things, right? I'm presuming statute of limitations hasn't passed because he was very vague about what exactly those things were. I won't ask him. I'll just take his word for it, right? But he talked about being in relationships and being worried that the other person would leave, and that would lead him to do stupid, dumb things, which sometimes would cause the other person to look at him and go, why am I with you? And then she would leave. The very things he tried to do to prevent the very things he was afraid of happening produced the things that he was afraid of happening to actually happen. Right? That's my story too. But a part of my story as it relates to booze, I find myself absolutely in that Big Book. And again, I use this expression, but it's really true. My wolves come to me as sheep. They never come to me as wolves. Alcohol never said to me to get me to take the first drink. It never said to me, drink so much tonight you say terrible things to people you love. Never told me that once. It never said, if you drink tonight, you'll spend all your money. It never said, if you drink tonight, the cops will show, she'll leave, the job will be in jeopardy, the judge will... Never said any of that to me. It said much kinder, gentler, sort of fun-loving things, right? Like, hey, it's 2 for 1 night. Right? Look, I know last night you swore to God that you would never do this again, and you won't, but just go out and have a couple. And I would go, a couple sounds reasonable. You know, there was this one guy I met a few years ago, and he had a couple, and then he went home. Maybe I could be like him. Yeah, you just go home. Just, you know what? Go to your wallet, take out the 50 or 60 bucks that's in there. Only bring 10 or 15 with you to the bar. That way you can't drink 50 or 60 dollars. This is how my head would talk to me. It never said, you're going to do things you regret tonight if you drink. It always told me something along this general line. Tonight, it's going to be different. And it never was different. So I got the drink, the phenomenon of craving that eventually leads to drunkenness, and I got all the thoughts that lead me up to that first drink, right? And so I got all the space in between drinks once I start, and I got all the thoughts in between the last drink I had and the next drink I'm going to have, right? And I'm powerless over both sides of that first drink. I'm powerless over both sides of that first drink. That some reason, and I don't know why, for as far back as I can ever remember, something's been wrong with me. I've always felt sort of fractured, or sort of separate from, or sort of distant. Kind of like a round peg in a square hole. I never quite felt like I was the hand in the glove, right? Something was always just a little bit off, you know? And the reality is something was off. I was missing something that every human being needs, and that's a relationship with God. I had no idea that the human engine runs on God, just like a truck runs on gasoline, right? And so I'm shoving anything I can into my gas tank to make me move forward in life, and I'm going nowhere. Matter of fact, the wrong things that I shove into myself is only damaging my engine more and more and more and more, and that causes ache in me. And I sort of feel guilty about that, and I sort of feel ashamed about that, and I sort of feel pathetic about that. But what's weird is, you know what makes the guilt, the shame, the fear, and the remorse go away? Not drunkenness. 1 or 2 drinks. Because I got this every time I drank. Ready? It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay now. And of course, boom, the allergy would kick in, right? I would continue to drink. I would continue to take more. So I'm sitting across from my sponsor. He says, Mike, you have this threefold disease, physical allergy, mental obsession. I said, yes, I have those 2. He said, well, AA doesn't do anything about those 2. We are not doctors. We cannot fix your body. We are not psychiatrists, therapists, or counselors. We cannot fix your brain. What we are is fellow travelers toward God. So you can walk with us to him and he can fix this third part, the spiritual malady that our book talks about. And that's where I want to pick up our first little handout. Because that's the point. Once I've made the conclusion that I have the threefold disease called alcoholism, and once I've come to the conclusion that there is something beyond me that can help that I can't help me with, but that something out there could help me with it, and it doesn't matter where I got that idea from. It's perfectly okay if I grew up in a church and I got that idea from them. It's perfectly okay if I sat in an AA meeting and I heard you tell me about how God helped you and I believed you. It's perfectly okay if I was cutting a lawn one day and I saw the sun in a different way and I couldn't believe I saw the sun that way. And suddenly I think there's something bigger than me out there. Or maybe I'm hunting with some buddies and the sun's just going down right over the harvest field. And I'm blown away by all the colors and it's okay, that's okay too. It doesn't matter how I get the idea that something bigger than me can help me. It matters that I get the idea that something bigger than me can help me. Those are conclusions that I draw. There's almost no action in it except living my life like a jackass. That's the precursor to the first 2 steps. I have to live my life like a jackass so well that I come to the conclusions that A, I'm a jackass, and B, my jackassness is absolutely beyond my ability to change my jackassness. But maybe there's something out there that can help a jackass. Those are conclusions. And once I've made those conclusions, we pick it up right here. We pick it up right here. So the context of the third step says this. This is the how and why, but first of all, we had to quit playing God. This is, by the way, this is right out of your big book. Right out of your big book. It says it didn't work. Next, we decided hereafter in this drama of life, God was going to be 3 things. He's our director. He is the principal. We are his agents. He is the father, and we are his children. Most good ideas are simple. And this concept was the keystone of the new and triumphant arch through which we pass to freedom. Notice how it doesn't say, once you decide you're alcoholic, make a commitment not to drink. It doesn't say that anywhere here, does it? Nowhere. Nowhere. It doesn't say, you know what, you need 90 meetings in 90 days. Fine print. Can you see it on there? No, it's not in there. It says that once you recognize you can't, you have to come to some conclusions about this power. That he's going to be your dad, he's going to be your director, he's going to be your principal. And what are you going to be? His agent and his principal, or his agent and his child. That's it. It says when we sincerely took such a position. What position? That God's going to be director, principal, and father, and we're going to be agent and child. All sorts of remarkable things followed. Richie talked about it. We had a new employer being all-powerful. He provided what we needed. If we kept close to him and performed his work well. Established on such a footing, we became less and less interested in ourselves, our little plans and designs. More and more, we became interested in seeing what we could contribute to life as we felt new power flow in. As we enjoyed peace of mind, as we discovered we could face life successfully, as we became conscious of his presence, we began to lose our fear of today, tomorrow, or the hereafter. We were reborn. And then it's got that beautiful third step prayer. And it says, we thought well before taking this, before taking this step, making sure we were ready, that we could at last abandon ourselves utterly to him. Well, what does that look like? Abandoning ourselves utterly to God. What does that look like? I got to tell you, I don't know. I didn't know when I first did this. I probably have a little bit better idea of what it means today, but completely I have no idea what that looks like. You know? Maybe the hole in the donut like the 7th step talks about. And the 12 and 12. I don't know. Because I read this as though I'm going to do it one time and then I'll never have to do it again because I've done it so perfectly this one time. That's how I read it. after being around this deal for a little while, I think it's more like this. Every moment, every second, I have to recommit to that. That the only place that God can be found is right now. The only place that I can receive his will, abandon myself to his will is right now. The problem is distraction, all the noise, right? Look how pretty she is. You're a fat guy sucking your tummy. Right? Yeah, all the chubby guys giggle. Right, yeah, sure. Right? Hey, here are the paychecks. What am I going to spend it on? Right? Hey, here are the bills coming in. How am I going to pay them? Hey, here's that guy that intimidates me. What does he think about me? Hey, there's this person I know I can intimidate. How can I intimidate them? All these distractions. All these distractions. I can never just be here because I'm fighting off all these gnats at the picnic in my head. Right? Utterly abandoning ourselves, I think is about working the steps so that noise gets turned really low. And all those gnats and all that distraction gets really quiet. So I can be here with you. So I can be here with him. It says we found it very desirable to take this spiritual step with an understanding person. That's great. It says next we launched on a course of vigorous action. Right? Richie read this. Right? It says the first step is a personal house cleaning, not a personal inventory. Personal inventory and a personal house cleaning, very different things. Personal inventory, if you came to my house and my wife said, let's do the chores. She wants a clean house. First thing we might do is, well, honey, what needs to be clean? She said, well, you got to dust, you got to vacuum, right? We got some dishes in the sink, right? We got, change the cat litter. There's a list. She would inventory what needs to be cleaned. That doesn't mean it's clean. That just means it's inventoried. Does that make sense? Personal house cleaning is after the work is done. In Alcoholics Anonymous, the work is not done until at least 9, probably 12. Right? So just doing an inventory, just doing the 4-step, really doesn't amount to anything, except that it's the precursor for the rest of the work. And it's the rest of the work that changes our hearts. Right? Because I got news for you. I'll bet you everyone in this room, because it's true for me, before I ever did a 4-step, I inventoried the living snot out of my life. And it went like this. You suck. You're pathetic. I can't believe you did that to her. I can't believe you did that to him. I can't believe you lied like that. Who the hell do you think you are? Oh my gosh, you think you're so cool, dude. No one is buying the fraud. No one is buying. I was doing inventory all the time, gang. All the time. So inventory isn't really going to help me if I just take inventory. What I need is a personal house cleaning, not a personal inventory only. Does that make sense? Sweet. So like Richie said, though our decision is a vital and crucial step, it could have little permanent effect unless at once followed by a strenuous effort to face and to be rid of the things in ourselves which have been blocking us. We had to get down to causes and conditions. So that's what the 4-step is about, right? The 4-step is about looking at these things and putting them on paper so that we can get rid of them in the other steps. Not just because of that, right? Not just because of that. So as we look at this, right, as we go through this process, the first thing we look at, we're going to look at 3 things. We're going to look at resentments, we're going to look at fears, and we're going to look at sex conduct, right? And in each section, there are 3 very specific actions that the book calls us to take in each section. The first one is think. It's analyze. Let's put some time and thought into it, right? It's a thoughtfully answer the questions that the inventory is asking us. The second thing is action, writing it down, and actually put it on paper, right? And then the third thing is one of the other things Richie talked about, which is prayer. When I came into Alcoholics Anonymous, if you had told me there were prayers so that God could help engage my sex life, I would be like, shot of Jack, please, right? I mean, come on. I never thought that was in Alcoholics Anonymous. You got to be kidding me. It's enormously important, enormously important. So on 64, it says this, therefore we started upon a personal inventory. Because we're needing a personal house cleaning, we start with a personal inventory. You can follow this in your book on page 64 if you'd like. If you need books, Randy, I think, has some in the back. You can raise your hand, he'll bring you one or whatever. And it says we did exactly the same thing with our lives, right? Took stock honestly. Searched the flaws in our makeup, right? It says being convinced that self manifested in various ways was what had defeated us. We considered its common manifestation. Its common manifestations are those three things: resentment, fear, and sex conduct. Right? And what's interesting is it says, convinced that self manifested in various ways. It doesn't say booze stirred up in different ways. Right? It doesn't say rum and coke and, schnapps and it doesn't say it. It says self. Self manifested. That's what had defeated us. That's what had defeated us. It says resentment is the number one offender. It destroys more alcoholics than anything else. That word destroy, that's a great word. That's a great word. I'll tell you what destroy, the definition of destroy means to render useless. To render useless. Richie talked about being irritated versus wanting to kill somebody in this sort of broad scope of how resentment can manifest itself in our life. And that idea of render useless. Look, if I had a stick of dynamite and one of you had a car outside and I lit the stick of dynamite and I threw the stick of dynamite in your car, I'd render it useless, right? Because it can't move after that. But I could also pop the hood and cut one wire and your car wouldn't move either. And it might look perfect to everybody going by. And they might all be impressed at the name on the back of your trunk. Except it's useless because it can't do what a car's supposed to do. When resentment prohibits me from doing the things that human beings are supposed to do, it renders me useless. It destroys me. Right? Destroys me. It says, from it stem all forms of spiritual disease. For we have not only been mentally and physically ill, allergy, lying mind, like we already covered, we've been spiritually sick. When the spiritual malady is overcome, we straighten out mentally and physically. That's a great promise. You get your heart right with God, he'll take care of your brain that's goofy as hell maybe right now. And he'll certainly keep that beer way far from you. I've been sober for a little over 27 years. I got to tell you, I do not keep myself sober. Every time I have tried to keep myself sober, I've wound up drunk. That's the truth. I do not have the power to keep me sober. I only have the power to let God keep me sober. That's it. It's a different thing. It sounds close, but it's not. It's very different. Right? So we go through this process, right? And it says very simply, in dealing with resentments, we set them on paper. Right? We listed people, institution, or principles with whom we were angry. If you can refer to the handout here on the second side, we got the third step sheet on the back of that. These are simply ideas about people, institutions, and principles. But these are the three things in resentment that we look at. Now, people sometimes are easy to figure out, right? I mean, that one guy in 5th grade, right? The prom date that told you no. Like, there's a lot. It was easy to figure out some of them, right? But some of them may not be, right? Some of them may be very difficult. Because sometimes we feel guilty about even having them, right? I didn't want to believe I resented my mom. I resented the daylights out of my mom. I've known married people that just don't want to just, they can't get honest. Right? So over the course of time, these are just some of the people or some of the potential people that you may resent. And then it got a little weird for me because it says institutions. So now I'm not really sure what you mean by that. Right? So over the course of time, we've collected some examples. This is not complete. You may have a ton more examples. Right? The institution of marriage you may resent. The church you grew up in. Right? The penal system. Governmental departments. Social organizations. Right? Who knows? I don't know. I don't know who teased you in Scouts, but maybe they're on that list. Right? I have no idea. What organizations? What institutions? Right? even powerful figures, right? People who exercise authority over you, right? That maybe have taken advantage of that or bullied you, or God forbid, you might be a little sensitive. They weren't really bullying you. It just felt like it. So therefore they did, right? And then principles, that also kind of threw me for a loop. What principles? How could I resent a principle, right? Well, there's a lot of them on here. Fairness. Fairness. See, I lived my life like this. When I made a mistake, you should show me grace. But when you made a mistake, you should administer justice. That seemed fair, right? It seemed fair to me, right? Different rules of behavior, right? Principles. I got to work to earn a paycheck to pay my bills. I just want the paycheck. Is there anything we can do with that one, right? If I'm going to grow in intimacy with my wife, I have to talk to her. That's a challenging principle, right? If she's going to grow in intimacy with me, I have to listen to her. That might even be more challenging, right? There's a lot in this, right? Sexism, racism, all of these things apply. They were all over the place with me. And I had no idea that they were eating my lunch. I really did not, but they were. Right? So we get them all down on paper. And here's how we do this. So if you can go to your 4-step sheet. Now I want to be very clear as soon as we pull out these sheets. This is an example of a 4-step. This is not the perfect way to do one, the correct way to do one, the way the good people do one, the way the smart people, it's not that. It's just a way to do them. Fair enough? Right? If your sponsor's like, don't ever use those sheets, don't use the sheets, right? This is how we have used them. That's all. That's all that means, right? But notice that it just says to list the people, institutions, and principles with whom you're angry. What does that mean? It means you don't go anywhere near column 2, 3, or 4 until you finish column 1. Before you ever move to another column, you complete the first column. You write down all the people, all the institutions, all the principles. You don't go anywhere else. You stay right there. Why? Because it's going to be really tough to come back to this, right, after you've gone across here. Because your mind's going to skip. Again, probably not your mind's, but mine was a little jumpy when I came in. It's kind of hard to stay focused, right? I would get to the bottom of the page and be like, where am I again? What's the deal? Oh, yeah, I was like, squirrel. I was that guy, right? Just one action at a time. One action at a time. First is work vertically, not horizontally. All the resentments first. The second question, it says right from our book, we asked ourselves why we were angry. That's column 2. Right? The third, and we go right down the page. After all the resentments are listed, well, I was angry at this guy for this reason. I was angry at her for this reason. I was angry at him for that reason. I was angry at this institution. You just go right down column 2 until you're done with column 2. Right? Third part, what part of self is affected? Right? In our 12 and 12, it talks about 3 instincts: social, security, and sexual. Right? Social instinct is about you having a relationship with something outside of yourself or some relationship with yourself. Right? It's community. Right? So sort of, and I'm using Big Book and 12 and 12 terminology in the sheet. Right? These come from the Joe and Charlie Big Book studies. Self-esteem, my relationship with me. How does that make me feel? And I go right down self-esteem until I'm done. Next one is personal relationships. Did it affect personal, and check marks? Right? Check marks. Security, material and emotional. Check marks. Write down emotional, write down material. All the way down till we're done. Sexual, acceptable and hidden. Well, what's acceptable? Acceptable has to do with the social stigma attached to the behavior. Right? So if it's a sexual behavior that you don't mind the whole world knowing about, it's acceptable. I'm a married guy. I love my wife. That's about all you're going to get out of that. But you could probably draw some conclusions for that, and it wouldn't offend me if you did. Right? We got into more detail. It may offend my wife, so we're not going to do that. I'm cool with that. But there have been some things in my past that I don't even want to reference here. Those are hidden. Right? Those are hidden. There's behaviors in our life today that we don't want publicly known, or that it would bother us if someone could infer that things were going on. Those are hidden. Does that make sense? A lot of head nods on that one. I won't comment. Anyway, good. Okay, so let's look at the example. So we're just going to move vertically right down the list. That's it, right? So let's look at the example. So there's some things we hear in Alcoholics Anonymous. We're going to blow them up a little bit. And the first one is that we're not supposed to judge. Anybody ever hear that before? Please don't, like we are non-judgmental people. Really, because you're telling me I shouldn't judge. That seems like you're judging me in terms of my judgment. Anyway, just saying. So let's look at the example. Let's see if Bill Wilson, in his example to all the recovery world, is judgmental. So here's Mr. Brown, right? He goes right down the list. Mr. Brown, Mrs. Jones, my employer, my wife. Then he goes to column 2, and he writes down why he resents those people. What's the cause? He's resentful at Brown because of the attention Brown is showing his wife. Brown told his wife about his mistress. You can see Bill's temperature rising a little bit at this point, right? Brown may get his job at the office, right? How about Mrs. Jones? Bill's very non-judgmental comment that she's a nut might go a long way here, right? She snubbed me. She's committed her husband for drinking. He's my friend. She's a gossip, right? Good thing he isn't casting stones at Mrs. Jones. How about the employer? He's unreasonable. He's unjust. He's overbearing. He threatens to fire me for drinking and padding my expense account. What a jerk boss, right? I mean, any boss that's going to fire you for stealing money by padding the expense account and drinking on the job clearly has an attitude problem. I think we can all agree with that. My wife misunderstands and nags. Again, no judgment here, Bill, right? Likes Brown, wants the house put in her name. What's the point? The point is this. It's very staccato. It's very short. It is not a life story, is it? Not at all. Not at all. It is boom, 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 boom. He looks at me like I'm an idiot. She talks behind my back. I didn't get that birthday present I wanted when I was 5. They always loved my sister more than me. That's all it is. Boom, boom, boom. It's not a story. See, when I wrote my first 4-step, it went something like this. It was a warm June day in 1973. I mean, right? I wanted the violins and the drama. 4-step doesn't want that. A 4-step simply wants the truth as you see it. And if you see it as this, she's a nut, he's overbearing, she's a jerk, they're completely okay with you writing that down, provided it's honest, right? So this idea that like, I gotta watch my terminology because the person I'm gonna give my 5th step to is gonna think I'm judgmental. Look, if you call somebody up to ask them to hear your 5th step, and they're going, what a fine specimen of character. I'd love to hear your 5th step. They have no idea what they're about to hear, right? They're not worried about it. Don't you be worried about it. Plus, writing all that gobbledygook, you know how long it's going to take you to get a 4-step done? In the early days of Alcoholics Anonymous, you couldn't show up, depending on what meeting you were at, you couldn't show up to a meeting of AA unless you completed a 5th step. Then you were welcomed in. Why? It meant you were on the path to completing step 3. Because all they talked about was spiritual growth, spiritual growth, spiritual growth, spiritual growth. And so they had to know that you were actually on the path, not that you had just said the 3rd step prayer and made a decision, but that you had actually taken some actions to move yourself down and complete that decision, then you would be welcomed in. Now, I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm just saying that's how it was, right? So as we go through this list, right, it says right on the bottom of page 65, nothing counted but thoroughness and honesty. Nothing. 0. That means, and it takes so much pressure off that line, I can make 1,000 mistakes on this. It doesn't matter. It doesn't say what matters most is perfect honesty. Every detail is listed. Every story is told. It doesn't say that at all. It says thoroughness and honesty. And if I can just start and move backwards, and when my brain is empty, that's thorough. And if I've written down honestly, that's honest. I'm done. Move on. Move on. It says the first thing that was apparent is the world and its people were often quite wrong. To conclude that others were wrong as far as most of us ever got. That's true in my case. The usual outcome is that people continued to wrong us and we stayed sore. So when I keep that attitude that the world is wrong, right? The usual outcome for me is that they're going to continue to hurt me, right? And I'm going to stay sore, and that's not how I want to live my life. Sometimes it was remorse, and then we were sore at ourselves. But the more we fought and tried to have our own way, the worse matters got. As in war, the victor only seemed to win. It is plain, the next paragraph begins, that a life which includes deep resentment leads only to futility and unhappiness. It doesn't say drunkenness, does it? It doesn't. It says futility and unhappiness. That means even if you don't drink and you hang on to your resentments, you will live a futile life and you will be unhappy. Even if you never drink again, because drinking isn't your problem. If you're here and you have that threefold disease called alcoholism, you have a broken soul. You need God to fix that. So then it goes on to say that we turn back to the list, for it held the key to the future. This is the bottom of page 66 here. It says we were prepared to look at it from an entirely different angle. Talked about how the world and its people really dominated us. It says in that state, the wrongdoing of others, fancied or real. Fancied or real. They don't even have to be honest things that people did to me. It just means that I think they did. Did you ever walk into a room and know 4 people were talking about you, even though there's absolutely no clue outside of you thinking they were talking about you, that they were actually talking about you? I've had that. And then what I did, because I'm me, is I got these 3 guys to get on my side. I would talk about them behind my back, talk about them behind their back, so that those 3, if they ever met those 4, if those 4 ever began to talk about me, I would have already preset them up to not believe those 4, because these 3 had already talked to me about those 4. This is how I live my life. I was wondering why I had knots in my gut. This was our course, it says at the bottom. We realized that people who wronged us were perhaps spiritually sick. Now, it doesn't say absolutely sick, does it? I've heard some people say, if they wrong me, that means they're spiritually sick. It says perhaps they were spiritually sick. I got to tell you, when I came into Alcoholics Anonymous, I met some people who were anything but spiritually sick. They were solid, and they ticked me off more than anyone. Why? Because my idiocy in the face of their maturity absolutely naturally caused conflict. They were not spiritually sick. Now, there were some people that certainly, perhaps, were spiritually sick, but not all of them. 67. There we go. Says we did not like their symptoms or the way they disturbed us. They, like ourselves, were sick too. It says we asked God to help us show them the same tolerance, pity, and patience that we would cheerfully grant a sick friend. When a person offended, we said to ourselves, this is a sick man. How can I be helpful to him? God, save me from being angry. Thy will be done. What's interesting here is that resentment has to be mastered. It just said that on the page before. These things have to be mastered. How do I master them? 5 through 12 for sure, but through prayer. I ask God to take away the anger that I feel. Look, God, save me from being angry, as if I'm the chief victim of my own anger. It doesn't say help them. There's nothing wrong with praying for other people. And then it says, show me how I might be helpful. We are called to pray for and to help the very people we resent. That's how we get over them. That's crazy. I would have never thought that. I would have never thought that. It says we avoid retaliation or argument. It says, referring to the list again, the next paragraph says, putting out of our minds the wrongs others had done, we resolutely look for our own mistakes. Fourth column here. Selfishness, dishonesty, self-seeking, frightened, and inconsiderate behavior. And I just go down that list and I just check them. I just go down that list and I check them. I was taught that taking a 4-step should take hours, not weeks. I think that's true. I think that's true. Right? The last thing I'll say, and then we'll close, is that the 4th step is only one portion of completing the 3rd step. The 4th step is the first action we take to complete the 3rd step. The 3rd step is our answer. Manifesting the principles in the 3rd step is our answer. 4 through 12 bring about this awakening so that we get to know him better, so that he can take care of us and serve us, and so that we can go out, take what he gives us and serve others and give it to them. If you're here tonight and you're looking for a sponsor, or you're at this point in the 4th step, or you've done a 4th step and you've left out sex or fear, or you've only looked at resentment, or you've only looked at one portion, or something's not necessarily aligned with kind of some of the stuff that you're learning as we go through the book, stick around and talk to some of us. Can I see a show of hands of people who've been in this room that if they want to stick around for 10 minutes or so, that have maybe been through a 4th through 9th step, then they would like to share their experience with some folks. Doesn't mean you're sponsoring them necessarily, but you would be willing to share your experience just so some people who may have some questions can find some people to talk to. Would that be all right? Can I see a show of hands? Look around. Okay. There's men, there's women here who want to help. Let us do that, right? Let us do that. Should we close with the Lord's Prayer? And don't forget next week's birthday night. Next week is birthday night, and we celebrate every month from 1 to 12 months, and then each year after that here, okay? So if you got a 4-month birthday, a 7-month birthday, it's okay. Come celebrate the birthday with us. Should we close with the Lord's Prayer?
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Keep coming back at your worst word.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's good. Good evening. This is Michael. I'm sorry. Let me step outside. I can't hear you. I'm in a gymnasium. Give me 1 second. That's good. Yeah.